Awakened Living is a 21st century movement for people who consider themselves spiritual but not religious, who have a deep hunger for connected community and a divine impulse for personal and global transformation. Our mission is to encourage and inspire the awakening of human consciousness. Good evening. Welcome to Awakened Living Television. My name is TJ Woodward. I am the host of your show and also the spiritual director of the Awakened Living spiritual community in San Francisco. In addition, I am the spiritual care coordinator and LGBT specialist at Foundation's intensive outpatient program here in San Francisco as well. We are a dual diagnosis program treating addiction and co-occurring mental health issues. And the reason I bring that into this is because our guest is back with us, Rosemary O Connor. She's written a wonderful book that is a guide to sober moms, and I know she's working on her second book. If you didn't catch our last show, we were, of course, really in the midst of a conversation. Then as things go, we kind of ran out of time. So I invited her back. She so graciously said yes. So we're going to get right back into this conversation. Rosemary, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks. And thanks for having me back.
Oh, I'm delighted to continue our conversation. And for those people who didn't watch the first show, if you could let our viewers know a little bit about you and your work, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, I'm Rosemary O Connor, and I'm the author of A Sober Mom's Guide to Recovery. And that was published last year by Hazelden. I'm very fortunate. I'm also the outreach manager for Hazelden Betty Ford, and they have treatment centers around the world for drug and alcohol and dual diagnosis. And I'm currently responsible for doing outreach for their treatment center in just outside Portland, Oregon, and then also Betty Ford down in the Palm Springs area. A little bit about me. I got sober about over 16 years ago, and my kids were 2, 5, and 8. I was separated from my now husband. I don't like the word ex. And, basically the book is 26 different very short chapters. A lot of it is just a lot of my own experience of different challenges I had and how I overcame them. So each chapter is short. And at the end of each chapter, it's got practical tools to address the challenge. So I don't know what else to say.
Well, let's get right back into it, because I know we talked a lot about what is addiction. We talked some about shame and how guilt and shame are different, and how as a mother getting sober, certainly as a mother active in an addiction, how much guilt and shame there is when getting sober and having to clean all that up. So you did such a great job talking about all that. I'm wondering if now we could start with talking about the role of forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness of ourselves and others. And this is true for all human beings. Yeah. And of course for mothers, and then of course for mothers in recovery, maybe even more. So I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about forgiveness.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a great topic. And again, like you said, so needed in the world. My experience was of all the damage I had caused myself and others in my alcoholism and other addictions. That is such a vital piece to heal that those wounds that we've caused ourselves and others in our recovery. I don't really know what happened first, forgiving others or forgiving myself. It's a continued climb of the mountain is what I always say. But it's been really such a gift that I no longer have to beat myself up for past mistakes. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't come up, but I have a solution that really to just go into love and compassion for myself. And to not blame others anymore. We're adults in recovery, and to continue to blame others and play the victim role, it doesn't serve anybody. And maybe in the past we were victims of circumstances, but in recovery we can learn to let go of those. And I always say we're just all doing the best we can, truthfully. And in my book Conscious Being, I write about forgiveness, and it's interesting in the chapter titled True Abundance, and I talk about how forgiveness
is the first step to living an abundant life, because as long as we're carrying around those old beliefs, those old ideas of right and wrong, good and bad, and I wish I could have or would have,
Yep.
we block ourselves really from connecting with that true abundance, which really is our birthright. I mean, I really get that that's our birthright.
I agree 100%. And what I always call that, about the woulda, shoulda, coulda, I call it that we're shoulding all over ourselves.
Right.
And it is. We were born complete, beautiful, and whole. And we enter into this world where it's a broken world, and I believe we're here to serve and help others. And yet, if we don't do that for ourselves, we can't give that away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that is so true, isn't it? That I find whether people have an addiction or they're in recovery or not, there comes a point, I think, in each of our lives where we ask the question, how can I serve? And how can I be of service to a planet that really needs it?
Oh, yeah.
And this healing and forgiveness is such a big part of that. The other thing I love that you talked about is the victim stance, and I write a chapter in my book on the 4 levels of conscious awareness, and I call level 1 martyr, only because I've given all of them an M name, but really it's victim consciousness, And of course, I mean, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, because that's how I am.
That's one of the things I love about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that when we're in an addiction, we're in that victim stance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that drinking is a way, and that using, gambling, whatever that addictive behavior is a way, as we talked about in the last show, to kind of try to fix something that feels broken internally. And a big part of that is the world is doing this to me.
Right. And so let me, drink at them. Let me use at them. And, what they talk about is that when we're, in the victim mold, we're actually drinking the poison, expecting the other person to die.
Right.
And that's what I love about recovery, is that I've learned to be 100% responsible for everything in my life. And that, again, was like alarming and so freeing.
Yeah.
And, how to do that is tricky.
Yeah.
And that's, again, what's a lot in my book, is just practical tools to take care of yourself in all different situations, whether it's, in relationship. Well, everything's a relationship to me.
Right.
My work, my money, my friends, my family, my higher power. We're in relationship with it all. And
Well, let's talk about money. I know you have a chapter called Money, 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 I believe,
money,
right?
money.
Money,
Oh,
money.
yeah.
Let's talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
that for a moment.
Oh, well, again, a lot of times I've heard that biggest cause of relapse is romance and finance. And I have to say that's definitely been my experience. Now, I haven't relapsed with drugs or alcohol, but I remember at one point in my recovery, I was so far in debt. I was $60,000 in debt, and the guilt and shame. And how am I going to dig out of this? As a young mother with 3 young kids, raising them in this very affluent, expensive area, trying to keep up with the Joneses. And I say, whoever the hell the Joneses are, right? Those damn people. Martyr, they're causing me a lot of stress. But, and so it's that journey of, again, not going outside of myself to buy, to shop, to fill that hole. And I know for me, when I get in overwhelm, is that one of the places I've acted out in my recovery is just to check out and go shopping, that retail therapy. And, the money thing has been a slow, painful road for me. It's about, how many times I've fallen down and gotten back up. And yet I've made a lot of progress in that area. And I know a lot of people in recovery, again, have a lot of money issues, whether it be the under-earning, the kind of the overspending, again, just using it as a drug to get out of ourselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you're saying that, I'm hearing out of balance, right? Whether it's overspending, under-earning. Right. I mean, I also know I've met some people that were in recovery they wouldn't spend anything on themselves.
Right.
So that's just the other side but it's really the other side of that same coin.
Right.
It's like there's something that feels like it's not okay with me, and I'm trying to control it somehow externally.
Oh, right.
So like the person that's overspending, which God knows I've had my day with that. That's the same thing. It's like I feel like I need to grab something to fill up some emptiness. But the person that's underspending, ironically, is kind of the same. I don't deserve this,
Oh,
so
for
I'm
sure.
not going to.
For sure. Yeah. That under earning, that lack of, again, giving to ourselves. It's that balance. But again, there's lots of help for that as well. And I always say it's not about like the alcohol, the relationship, the money, work. It's about what's going on inside of me, that core thing. It's like, what's the common denominator? All those things, it's me.
Right.
And again, like we talked about, not coming from I am not a victim. What can I do practically to change things? And like in my book around money, one of the tools I talk about is, put $5 away per month. It's very self-esteeming to just put $5 away instead of be $5 in debt. Just those little practicals, like to save money is building your self-esteem.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love that you talked about all of them really being the same, whatever the behavior is, because they're all, they're symptoms, right? They're just symptoms.
Right.
And they're also solutions. And when I work with clients now, when we get to the place where they recognize that alcohol or drugs or sex or shopping, whatever it is, isn't the problem, it's the solution.
Yeah.
And, the way I say it is, we don't call it an addiction until it's not fun anymore. And when it's working, we just call it fun.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden it doesn't work, and then it becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
So speaking of fun, I know you write a couple of chapters in your book about fun and laughter and, where are we headed with all of this as we let go of the shame, as we forgive ourselves, as we clean up our financial picture.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the joy of really being in recovery and being alive and being spiritual beings.
Yeah. Well, I know one of my biggest fears when I first got sober is that I wasn't going to have any fun anymore, and I'd be sentenced to this life of misery and woe is me. And I believe, again, if you don't find fun and joy in your life, like I didn't get sober to be miserable, and we live once. As far as I know, and on this, I know I'm living now. So what's going on after I die, I have no idea. I don't have time to figure that out. But, the fun, we've got to bring joy and fun in our lives. And I know a lot of people, when they first get sober, they don't know what fun is. Like for me, fun used to be getting drunk, falling down, dancing on the tables. When I got sober, I had no idea what fun was. And so I tell people in my book, like, what did you do for fun, like when you were a kid? Yeah. Well, I used to love to dance. So in my recovery, I've taken lots of dance classes, or I might just be dancing around my living room, dancing in the shower, again, that joy. And for me, joy is learning, new hobbies, new talents. So.
And it's the simple things in life, right? It's those simple things that bring us joy. Being present in the moment, being in awe and wonder. I mean, remember being a kid before all this got crazy, and we were just so present and so alive. And I mean, I remember being in my backyard, in the summertime, and it just seeming like an eternity, just playing in the backyard and looking at the bugs and the insects and the bees and the flowers. And, to me, that's what joy is, which maybe is different than happiness or fun. It's that joy, that absolute joy of being present and reconnected with myself and others.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Again, too, I still wake up, I'd say 99.9% of the time, like looking out my window saying, wow, look at that mountain. I can't believe I get to live here. Or wow, look at that cute little dog or that little baby. Again, I had no joy before I got sober. Right. That is for sure. I tried to manufacture it a whole lot.
Yes.
And I didn't even know what it was, really.
Yeah, and that's a very different experience than finding it inside.
Oh, for
I
sure.
know that, I wrote my book and you wrote your book, and when our books get out there, one of the joys, one of the true joys of being an author is, the phone call or the email that we get where someone's life is impacted. And I want you to, I'm going to tell a little story about my book, and then I want, if you could be thinking of like one person that reached out to you where you recognize that, what you did, because writing a book is work, and having that work pay off and knowing that it impacted another. For me, I got an email and then ultimately a phone call with a woman that lived in South Texas in a small town. And she read my book and she said, I never knew there was anyone else that thought or believed or felt like me.
Yeah.
And I was in tears. Every page, I was in tears because someone finally gets it. I live in a very conservative area where the only talk of spirituality is one brand of religion.
Oh, wow.
And she wanted to explore something really different. And for that moment where she said, I recognized that I could love myself with all of my, what felt like really oddities there in that part of the world. Nothing against Texas. I lived there and I loved it in Dallas. When we're in a small town in South Texas, it's different though.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm wondering if you could think of a time or a story or impact that your book had on someone.
Oh God, again, like you said, that's the best part. My first one that I got, and I've saved a lot of them, was again this woman saying, "Oh my gosh, I stumbled across your book, like ironically," and as she said, it came to me in the perfect time. I'm a single mom with young kids. I can't stop drinking. Thank you for the hope that and the inspiration. So that was one, and then really, I'm going to get choked up. It's back to the subject that we talked about, forgiveness. It was between my father and I, and all my whole life, all I ever wanted was to please my father, and I think that's a common thing with us, with our families and parents, and the core that it was always like I couldn't do anything good enough to get my dad's love and approval. And that is so not true. If you knew my dad and watched us growing up, I mean, he's amazing. But somehow I got that message. We get these crazy messages as kids. And so he looked at me, and I remember writing the book, and my writing coach, Diane Conway, she's so great. I said, I can't put this in my book because what if my dad reads it? And she said, oh, we'll just edit it out later. You just write. And I remember after I thought, oh my gosh, we didn't edit. We didn't take those stories out that I don't want my father to read. So anyhow, it came out. And right after it came out, I was in Hawaii. And I spent a couple days with them. They happened to be in Hawaii too. And my dad looked at me. He had just finished my book. And with tears in his eyes, and I haven't seen tears in my father's eyes, too many times. And he looked at me and he just said, Rosemary, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so sorry for all that you had to endure, and I love you, and and we just had this beautiful connection. Again, back to that connection of, one human to a next. And I got to tell him, I said, Dad, it's been the greatest thing for me, my journey. And I got to thank him for, he's such a God-based man, for the, all the basis that he gave me as a kid, and all the love and all the support. And all I can say is that was worth, like I said, I get choked up.
Yeah.
And I've had endless, stories from other women and even men, people that aren't mothers too. So that's been the best part of this journey.
Wow, thank you for sharing that story, because that really is the healing that can take place in our lives with this kind of willingness and focus on these principles, really, forgiveness, acceptance, connection. Let's switch gears a little, because I know you and I are both writing our new books.
Oh, yeah.
And I was one of those authors. I said, I'm not going to write my second book for 5 years. And it just like after a year, I got the calling. I started getting the image for the next book. And my next book is going to be titled Conscious Recovery, Looking at Addiction Through the Spiritual Lens, or what I call the spiritual lens.
I love it.
And looking at, what is addiction, what the root causes are, and then how we break free using spirituality and spiritual principles to not only break free of addictive patterns, but also live a life of connection, of open-heartedness, of love, or filled with love, I could say.
Yeah.
So I don't think you have a title for your next book yet, but I know that you know a little bit about where it's headed. What are you willing to share with us about it?
Yeah, you have to say, oh my gosh, I love the work you do, and I'm so excited for your second book. Oh my gosh, yeah, you really do exude what you write about, which is nice. It's not just like a lofty idea. You really do live that. And
Thank you, Rosemary.
It's great to have you in my life.
Yeah.
So my next book, basically when I did this first proposal to Hazelden, it was 70 different topics, and this book turned out to just be 26 topics. So basically I just presented to them now, it's many more topics that are kind of universal topics. It's not going to be pinpointed towards just moms. It's just going to kind of be, and again, it's kind of like the topic, the all about it, and some of my stories and client stories, and the solution to it. That's what it is now. It's still in very raw form. I'm having more conversations with Hazelden right now and seeing if, might take a different direction. But so I have no idea what the title will be.
Yeah, and I love that you're allowing it to be an organic process. I was at an event where you were speaking, and I remember some of the men in the audience saying, gosh, I relate to all of this, and I didn't know your book was going to offer something to me because it was a guide to sober moms. So I'm loving that you're going to open up and include everyone in this, because the principles you write about really are universal. And I also love that you have 70, which means I can already see that there's a third book.
Well, that's actually what Hazelden said when I submitted it. That's what they said. Oh, this could be a couple books. I said, sure. How many do you want? Because I have a lot more books in me.
Yeah, and we know how to say yes, you and I.
Oh boy. I
Maybe
know.
learning to say no is.
That's going to be in the next book. Yeah, balance, right?
Yes, yeah. I know that Annie Lamont, who is a wonderful person and writes a lot about recovery, and she lives in Marin. I know that she wrote a review on the cover of your book. What a gift that is. She's just so wonderful. My favorite Annie Lamont quote is, lighthouses don't go looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining brightly.
I haven't heard that one. I love that.
Well, I mean, I've seen it on a meme, and she got credit for it. I don't know.
Well, that sounds like I love Annie. She's been such a great support of mine. The fact that she gave me, a raving review, that she actually read my book, she's been amazing. That's again in recovery, we get all these like angels that show up just like right when we need them. Yeah. And so,
And what a gift that is, isn't it? And I know for myself, my first spiritual teacher was Mary Helen Brownell, and just an amazing enlightened being. And if I can have even 10% of the impact I know that she had on others, it will be a life well lived. And so my intention, and I remember there was that turning point for me where I recognized somehow, and I don't know if this, somewhere around 40, when my whole life fell apart, and I was 20 years sober, by the way, when my whole life fell apart, and that was okay. I wanted to rebuild it, and I remember thinking a lot about her and her life, and thought, oh, now it's my time to give. Because I received from her for all those years, and really just like felt so thirsty for someone to see me as whole and perfect and precious, as she always said. And then now I get to do that for others. What a gift.
Isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that was the gist of my book. I had a lot of women when I was about 10 years sober, wanting help from me. And since I'm also recovering codependent, and I had 3 kids and a full-time job, my intention was, this was the way, I asked myself, how can I reach more women? And the thought came to me was this book. And again, my intention was, if this book helps one woman, one person, I've done my duty. I've done my, and again, the giving back is like nothing I could have imagined how that would feel. It's that makes the world go around. That's why we're here. I believe, to help each other, support each other, and have a lot of fun.
And have fun. So believe it or not, we only have a few minutes left again.
Gosh,
so just take a moment, is there anything else either you want to leave our viewers with, or is there something we didn't cover? Is there a concept in your book? I just want to invite everyone to go to Amazon or to Hazelden. Is it hazelden.org?
Hazelden.org.
Yeah, to look for the book. It's called A Sober Mom's Guide to Recovery. So look the book up. It's amazing. I will confess I haven't read all of it, but what I've read, I love. And I hear a lot of women talking about how much they love it and how you've impacted them.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. And, what I would say is, again, you are not alone. You deserve to live a fabulous, wonderful, full life. And if I can be of any support or any help, you can go to my website. It's ROCRecoveryservices.org. Oh no, I'm .com, sorry. Hazeldens.org. That's where you can get the book as well. So thanks again, TJ.
Thank you. And thank you, Rosemary O Connor, for being a guest on our show 2 times. What a gift. And for all of you who are viewing, thank you so much for tuning us in and being with us this evening in this conversation about how we do live our most dynamic life, our most connected life, a life where we move through forgiveness into joy and into laughter. I love that we talked about that this evening. And I love that Rosemary offers such practical tools in her book to help all of us, whether we're a mother or not, or whether we're in recovery or not. The principles that are in her book are applicable to us all. So thank you again, Rosemary, for being on the show. And for all of you who are viewing, thank you so much one more time for being part of our community, Awakened Living. For more information about my work, visit tjwoodward.com. For more information about Awakened Living, it's Awakened Living SF, like sanfrancisco.org. Thank you so much, and good night.